Welcome to my channel. I'm Traven.
And I'm Amanda.
And in today's video, we'll be looking at Chapter 2 of Subcutanean. So as you may know, if you frequent the kinds of horror booktube channels that we do, Subcutanean is a book where every copy is different. It is minor changes so far, but what we did was we went to the publisher's site and you can buy 2 copies where they create 20 copies of the book and then pick the 2 that are the farthest apart. So my book is from seed number 44546.
And I am 44541.
And these were the 2 most different copies of the ones that they made. And so we read through chapter 1 the other day, and we were reading out loud about 3 or 4 paragraphs each, and then just stopping each other when we're like, oh no, there's something different, there's something weird about my copy. And so we thought it would be fun to read out chapter 2, and so that people who are interested in this book might get a sense of the kind of differences that copies have. Let's talk about some of the differences that have happened so far.
My main character got drunk when they were out before they discovered the weirdness in the house.
Mine is just horribly confused.
My weird downstairs subcutanean area has no furniture. It's fair.
Mine has a little bit. It's very sparse, but they do make a note of the furniture that's down there.
Oh, and when we saw spooky shadow people, my character saw themselves and their friend standing at the end of the hallway.
And mine just saw their friend. So at first it didn't even seem spooky, but then there were like all these different like shadow.
It was like something's wrong.
Versions.
It's not him. Yeah.
And they came from the other direction. So
one thing I do like is it wasn't just a single line that like my guy got drunk and then it was never mentioned again. Mm-hmm. It's come up multiple times throughout where like when he starts to see spooky stuff, he's like, oh man, I must be drunk. And his friend is like, oh, how much did you have to drink? And it's been consistent throughout instead of just being like a throwaway line, like in one place, oh, he got drunk, and in the other, it's not. It has been a consistent through line that he was drunk.
Yeah, and mine also tends to be wordier about certain things. And so we've had completely different paragraphs. It's not just like a single line or a single word that's changed, although sometimes that also happens. But we've had deviations, and my assumption or my guess is that as you get further into the story, they can deviate further from the starting path, and then as long as they get back to the same ending, you can wind up with a similar story. And so before we get to that point, I thought it would be good to just sit down and try this out, and again, so people who are interested in the book can kind of see how it works. If you pick up the copy from Amazon, or you find it in a bookstore, I think it's all going to be the same seed. So if you pick it up there and someone else picks it up there, it will be the same book, as opposed to these that are distinct, unique seeds. And there is an audiobook, which I believe is also... It's one seed, yeah. It's one seed, but it's different from the one you would get off of Amazon. So if you like to read along with your audiobooks, this one isn't going to work for that. Yeah. And there are a couple other different ways that you can get it. There were a couple of Twitter accounts, I think, that tweeted it out when it first came out. It's all on the website. Yeah. But if you want to get, like, the experience of having 2 completely different books for a buddy read, or a book that is just uniquely yours and no one else has the exact same copy that you, then you really need to go through the author's website. Yeah. We found out about this, I think through How to Train Your Gavin? Yeah, he was reading it for one of his haunted house visits, which he didn't finish, and then he was reading it later and wasn't
completely into it, I don't think. So I'm not sure where he ended up with it.
Yeah, I know he wasn't we were watching a reading sprint with him, and he was saying that it wasn't jiving with him. It wasn't doing well. And so that's unfortunate, but I'm really excited about it. And
you were on board for the concept for immediately as soon as you found out the like unique copies of books. You were on board regardless.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how different these are. I'm probably going to read both copies, and then I'll see how different they are, if I might want to read it again or pick up the audiobook and read a number of them. But we're going to read through chapter 2. We're not sure about copyright. But if that sounds like a good time, then stick around and you'll be able to see the kinds of differences that these books have.
The story so far, we have our main character, Orion, and his friend Nico have just moved into a house, and the house is kind of weird. It's not as advertised. It has more rooms. They keep finding weird places that were not on the listing for the house, and they're just like, wow, this landlord's just giving us extra house, I guess. And they talk about the weird angles, how things don't meet right. He and Nico had a fight.
Yeah.
And then they decided to go out to a club together. And then when they came back, they discovered a secret staircase in Orion's room.
Under his bed.
Under his bed that led down. He's on the second floor, but the stairs went down into a cellar-like area.
Yeah, and then later they're looking and they can see some corners at the top of the first story.
That would be the staircase.
Yeah.
And they're calling it the downstairs with a capital D. And there's a big room and then some hallways with other rooms. And mine were all empty, and his had just some dilapidated furniture. Mm-hmm. And there was power, mm-hmm. and flickering wall sconces, and
Ryan started, I think, freaking out or having something go on.
He was feeling dizzy.
And so his friend, what's the friend's name?
Nico.
Okay, so Nico was going to go
explore. He wanted to find the end of the hallway.
Yeah, but he comes back and he says that it's...
He said that in yours.
Yeah, he said it's a huge place and he didn't find an exit.
But he didn't say that in mine.
Okay, so yeah, so I think you're going to start up...
Yeah, which is how my chapter starts, because we saw that when we were looking ahead, comparing the end. But like we said earlier, Orion saw weird shadow people down a hallway with no lights. Mm-hmm. And then Nico showed back up and then there was nothing there anymore. So yeah. Orion's the only one who saw anything weird other than weird impossible space that never ends. Do you want to start or should I start?
You should start because you got the extra,
right, yeah.
You got the extra bit.
Turned out Nico hadn't found the end of the hallway. It had twisted a couple more times, he said, then split again. But that was all academic while I was puking my guts over the toilet bowl for much of the awful day after. Still, it might seem odd that we didn't go back down there to map the whole thing out right away. I can't really explain it, unless Nico was already feeling the same irrational foreboding as me.
So yeah, I don't have the line about puking.
You don't have the puking stuff, yeah?
It was just, he felt fine after a good night's sleep.
That's not fair. I've always spooked too easy. Horror movies, for instance, were an absolute no-go. I'd realized this at some point in high school when they were still a kind of macho rite of passion. One of the last ones I watched was a terrible direct-to-video job about a creature that lived in the woods and hunted down the teenagers who kept blindly wandering in. When you finally saw the monster, it was a huge letdown, terrible makeup on an even worse actor. But before you saw it on screen, you heard it. And the movie's whole gimmick, its thing, was that the creature would parrot back anything said to it in the original voice. Flawless. It wasn't clear if it understood the words or just mindlessly mimicked the sound. But while it was slaughtering each hapless cheerleader, it would repeat her terrified cries for help back to her perfectly. It would keep screaming in her voice after she died. That concept settled into my brain and ate away at me for weeks, though I couldn't explain why it was so terrifying. Why should the worst thing to hear from the dark woods at night be not snarls or growls or witchy laughter, but your own voice, yourself? And yet it was. A few weeks later, I jerked awake well after midnight, certain something was standing in the shadows of my room, and as I reached out frantic for my lamp, I knocked it off the nightstand, and it crashed to the floor, the bulb shattering with a tinkle, and I stupidly called out, "Is someone there?" And as I did it, I realized if I heard it repeated back to me from the shadows, it would be the end of me, a clean break through my sanity, even if it was a joke or a prank or a hallucination. And as I clutched my blanket, too terrified to go to the light switch on the wall, I prayed, pleaded my brimful imagination not to choose that moment to overflow, to improvise, to believe in things that weren't really there, like it had each time I'd read too much into smiles and gestures, each time I'd watched vivid movies play in my head, sprung from single sentences in books, or looked at clouds and really seen fantastic shapes in them. And I'm pretty sure that was the exact moment I decided horror movies weren't for me.
Anyway, I knew there wasn't really anything downstairs, and as the memory faded, so did the lingering terror. Replacing it was a giddy sensation like having too much candy. There was a whole huge secret basement under our house that only we knew about. It felt good to have another secret, another code in our personal dictionary, something only for us.
So yeah, instead of the memory faded, mine is the hangover fading. Does yours not say Halloween candy?
No.
No, it doesn't. So. Mine says too much Halloween candy. And then I feel like there was, mine says there's something only we knew about, Nico and I. So it's just little things.
Yeah. Nico was terrible at secrets. By next afternoon,
Nico was terrible at keeping secrets.
By next afternoon, all other housemates had seen downstairs too, as well as a couple of his baseball buddies and one or two of his closest chess buddies.
Oh, mine are philosophy buddies.
He made a point of changing majors and hobbies once a quarter for the past year, while continuing to swear up and down to his immigrant parents that he was still majoring in economics. I tried not to take the betrayal personally. But the strange thing was that no one seemed much interested. Everyone agreed downstairs was a cool find and made for a sick hangout spot, but no one cared to venture too far outside the big central room or spend too much time down there. Everyone other than Nico and I would get bored, started talking about other things, eventually drift back upstairs to whatever they'd been doing before. Odd in hindsight.
We did end up moving a couple couches down, and it was murder getting them around those tight landings, let me tell you. Do you have any of that?
They dusted off the furniture and moving a half dozen boxes.
Okay, I've got that. Yeah. And a half dozen boxes of my records, and made the big room available as a kind of secondary hangout space, quieter than the crowded front room with the TV and people always coming and going. Some of the empty rooms off the big one turned into overflow storage for everyone's miscellaneous shit, but remained otherwise unoccupied. "Man, y'all could live rent-free," one of Nico's ex-bandmates said one night while we were down there, poking her head into another lonely room. "Let these out to peep to those poor engineering frosh. They don't see no daylight anyway." "Yeah," I said, "except everyone would have to come in and out through my bed." "I mean, they wouldn't walk directly over you," she explained, patting a patronizing hand on my shoulder. "Even though I know that kind of sad sack white boy victim scene is right up your alley. You ask nice, they'll just gently kick you out of the way." I didn't get on well with most of Nico's friends. I'm sure they all wondered what he saw in me.
No one did end up moving down there.
Whoa, wait, no. Whoa, I have a whole bunch before we get that.
Okay,
I have that, but it's a whole bunch later.
Continue.
So where did it stop for you?
Right where you left. No one saw me. No one did end up moving down there.
So it says, I'm sure they wondered what he saw in me. Sometimes I did too. Once on a bad day, I'd been sitting on the roof of the Sciences Tower crying. It was supposed to be off limits, but we'd figured out how to get up there one night. Another shared secret. Keeping me company was a rusted-out telephone, a hulking cube of HVAC, and a 10-story drop. I wasn't seriously considering anything, but took some morbid comfort from having the option at hand. The access door creaked open, and I looked back with a guilty stare, ready to be reprimanded or maybe arrested. But it was only Nico. He came over to sit next to me, pulling out 2 cigarettes and angling one at me. Uncharacteristically, I accepted. We sat there smoking for a long time. "How did you know I was up here?" I finally asked. He shrugged. "Came home and you weren't there. Kinda had a feeling." We sat there looking down the gently sloping hill of campus, its landmarks and avenues made abstract and manageable. A miniature city you could wrap your arms around, contain. Everyone in the world tiny, except for us. No one did end up moving downstairs.
The line says down there.
Yeah.
Zero natural light is kind of a downer, even for well-adjusted people. Nico made some noise about bringing a girl down sometime. Dude, it's a secret makeout layer. You're doing college wrong if you don't get some action down there. But we both knew he wouldn't actually do it. It was too quiet, for one thing. It also felt forbidden, somehow, but not like in a sexy rule-breaking kind of way. Being down there had the vague flavor of trespassing, the kind where you're not going to get away with it, and it'll go bad for you when you get caught. Sneaking into a restricted area at the airport, busting into Area 51. I mean, it was our house, right? But downstairs didn't feel like ours. Enough laughter or booze or noise, and the feeling went away, or at least buried itself somewhere deep where you'd hardly ever notice it. Maybe because of that, definitely because of the day-to-day distractions.
Wait, okay. I didn't have any of that until maybe because of that.
You didn't have, okay.
Go back. I stopped at, we both knew he wouldn't actually do it. It was too quiet for one thing. Yeah, keep going. It was on the previous page.
Okay.
There.
Okay.
Mine said, it felt a lot like the rooftop, forbidden, charged with risk, with dangers from within and without, but also with intense electricity of connection, a bond. Like if I went down alone, he'd know I was there, and vice versa. Like we were the only people who knew how to get there. That I have mainly because of that.
Okay. Definitely because of the day-to-day distractions. Maybe also because we enjoyed prolonging the sense of mystery, and okay, because I was sulking. More than a week passed before we got around to scoping out the place in depth. Nico spent a day in an extraordinary funk of fierce depression, followed by an equally intense reversal, like he'd do from time to time, and I took advantage of his high to prod him into going to catalog the rest of downstairs.
Oh, you catalog? I have to scope out.
He took to this plan eagerly and seemed pleased when I told him I'd been waiting so we could do it together. Ryan, he said fondly, in an emergency, you know, you can do things without me. I'll allow it.
Well, I kind of thought this was like our thing, you know? He fell onto one knee. Oh, my noble Orion, he intoned. Canst thou e'er forgive such rank betrayal, breaking this our vow of secrecy? Will thy gentle heart recover? Okay, I said, waving my hand. Get over yourself. He leapt up with a wicked grin, made himself a pot of coffee, put on a truly awful and unseasonable Christmas sweater, and headed downstairs with me to map out what was down there. Except we couldn't. We'd grabbed flashlights in case of dark corners or burnt-out bulbs, but didn't need them. Every hall was lit by those cheerful, bright wall sconces, and most of the side rooms had a single bare bulb in the center of the ceiling. But it was the damnedest thing. We couldn't find an end to the place. We picked one hallway and wandered around for maybe 15 minutes, just through T-junctions and 90-degree corners, past dozens of doors and empty rooms. The same wood-paneled walls, 70s carpet, and wall sconces were everywhere. Downstairs was aggressively bland, but disturbingly unbounded. It went from weird to surreal to sort of frightening how much of it there was.
I have half-furnished rooms. I was waiting till you got to the end of the paragraph, but that's the only difference so far.
Okay.
Mine are not bare, mine are half-furnished.
Of course. I'd poked my head into a room with a nook at the far end.
Oh, and there was just one of the and this was just one of the 5 hallways off the central room.
Oh, I don't have that line. I'd poked my head into a room with a nook at the far end, a wooden dowel running along the top.
No, I had poked my head into a room with an enormous old bureau, empty like all the furniture, and a nook at the far end.
Oh.
A wooden dowel running along the top?
Like a doorless closet?
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe. I wandered over to investigate, hoping for a few dusty hangers, the remnants of an old calendar, some comforting sign of former human occupation. No such luck. I mean, the place looked like people should have lived there, but there was almost nothing around to prove it.
Aging furniture aside.
An honest mark scuffed the walls, the odd piece of lint dotted the floor, but there was no height marks penciled on door frames. No piles of old magazines, no bright squares on dirty walls where pictures once hung, not a single old candy wrapper or forgotten sock. I ran my hand across the wooden dowel and wondered who had put it there, if anyone had ever hung clothes from it.
I turned around and saw Nico hadn't followed me in. I felt a moment of disorientation. The door seemed a long way away. No, blinking, I realized it wasn't that. When I turned back toward the doorway, it wasn't there. I frowned. The doorway was on the other side of the room from the one I'd instinctively turned to. I thought I'd walked along the wall to get to the nook. that it and the door had been on the same side, but the door was on the opposite wall, diagonally across from me. I closed my eyes, suddenly dizzy. I remembered keeping the fading white wall to my right as I crossed the carpet to the closet nook. But when I looked again, the door was still where it was, in the opposite corner. Obviously, it hadn't moved. You're doing it again. Don't see things that aren't there. You fucking idiot. Pushing away the uneasiness, I crossed diagonally across the carpet to the door, unable, as I did, to shake the sensation that I was tracing a different path than the one I'd walked coming in. That this door led somewhere else. I pushed my head out of the hallway. It looked just the same. Of course, they all did. Nico? No answer. Cool, I thought, keeping a firm grip on myself. I walked down the hall in the direction we'd been heading, peeked around the corner.
So instead of, what did you think? Cool?
Yeah, cool.
I thought perfectly fine and normal.
More hall, more carpet, more doors. No Nico. I shouted his name again, louder. Nothing. It was so quiet. I started down the hall, then halfway down thought maybe I should go back, not forward, then stopped in confusion. If you're lost, you're supposed to stay put, not wander around. The knob on the nearest door started to turn.
My heart tried to jump out my throat. The door thumped. The knob turned the other way, faster, more violent. With a shuddery squeal, the door burst open, Nico's shoulder leading the rest of him out. Stuck, he said, jiggling the knob, like the one upstairs. Oh, God damn it, I spilled my coffee. We looked down at the new dark stain on the carpet. He licked droplets from his fingers, inspected a candy cane sweater cuff. Thank Christ it didn't stain the cashmere. That is not cashmere, I said, rolling my eyes. Hey, don't wander off on me like that. I didn't want to admit how spooked I'd been, and thought I'd done a good job at hiding it, but of course he knew me better than that.
Sure, and sorry, but hey, his eyes had a mischievous glint. Come check it out. I found some stairs.
Oh, I have that later.
Okay.
So you just missing the bit I have?
Yeah, as soon as he talks about the cashmere and don't wander off like that, I got the sure and sorry.
Okay, yeah, I have a whole bunch in the middle.
Okay.
Of course he knew me better than that. He stared into me, seeing those emerald eyes full of concern was enough to melt my fear, transmuted into something infinitely better. Okay, I laughed. You're not in trouble. Just stay close, yeah? Sure, and sorry, but hey. His eyes had a mischievous glint. Come check it out. I found more stairs.
The new stairs led down into darkness. From the top, we could see about 20 or 30 steps before things got shadowy, and enough of the shadows to tell the stairs kept descending for a while after that. Nico had been excited to show me, but now he perched uneasily on the top step. I got out my flashlight and switched it on, pointing downward. Come on, maybe there's some answers down there. He still looked hesitant. I put on my straightest face and my best PI voice. Don't you want to get to the bottom of this?
You're saying pointing downward?
Where?
No, you're just... Okay, never mind.
He frowned in concern. I just wouldn't want your boyfriend to get jealous, me spending all this time down here with you. This was a little joke of his. I didn't have a boyfriend, but he flicked on his own light, waved at me. After you, amigo. There were about 100 steps. Other than that, and the fact that we were lighting our way with the flashlights, they seemed like any other stairs in a house built during the Nixon administration and sinking into senility. That same damn carpet. They must have bought the whole factory.
The wall sconces were still there, but no longer lit. Still no light switches anywhere. When the stairs finally gave out, it was into another hallway, nearly identical to the ones above. This one felt a bit bigger, and
this one felt a bit smaller.
Oh no! And the carpet a darker shade, looking more brown now, though maybe both impressions were a trick of the flashlights. Funny how much light influences your perception of spaces, of shapes, colors, everything really. More rooms opened off this hall, though these had more variety. A few doors were locked, which we hadn't encountered on the upper level. Some of the rooms seemed like bedrooms. A few even had old bed frames and mattresses in them. I searched the walls in vain for colored tacks with ripped corners of posters still attached, or even a crumpled gas station or seat. It wasn't like the place was sterile. Another room had a drain in the floor with stains running up to two big utility hookups on the wall, and the faint smell of dust and moths and yellowing wallpaper glue was everywhere. What was missing was anything personal.
You had a couple more lines somewhere in there.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, about the furniture again, I'm pretty sure.
Do you have furniture, though?
Yeah, I think so, but it's just, it's not remarked on at all. It goes straight from a few doors were locked on the upper level. I searched the walls in vain for cover.
Okay, yeah. Tracks. So you don't have the bed frames and mattresses.
Yeah.
Because that's not remarkable to you because you've had that.
Yep.
Okay. The weirdest room, though, was the kitchen. It was too big for a kitchen, for starters, and it had too much stuff in it. Too many oven hookups, too much haphazard ceiling ventilation, red-handled water valves everywhere, and a dozen jumbled stovetops with holes where the burners should be. There were parts of appliances, but no whole ones, bundles of wiring, even a kitchen sink. Nico tried the faucet, and we both were startled when water came out. It was like a half-assembled restaurant kitchen with all the equipment jumbled together, rather than a row of stoves here and a row of dishwashers there. I found what was clearly the plumbing for a toilet hookup in the middle of one wall, and had to put my foot down about this making any sense at all. Maybe a wall was supposed to go up here. Nico shined his light between the bathroom plumbing and the nearest stovetop, but the kitchen stuff extended to either side. Who puts a toilet in the middle of a kitchen? I didn't get it. He shrugged.
Just the one door, too, and nothing nearby that might have been a dining room or pantry. A few doors down was a long, narrow room paved entirely in yellow bathroom tile and gray and grout. A rust-pitted showerhead, 2 immobile handles, and dirt-clogged drain clusters at one end, 30 feet away from the opposite wall. You get the feeling whoever built this place didn't exactly know a lot about architecture. Nico's voice was hushed in a kind of reverence.
Okay, hold on. Because my paragraph was really different. So I had just the one door, too. We didn't find anything that was a dining room or pantry. Mm-hmm. Mine says, though we did find a large, empty, low-ceilinged room a few doors down. Not that you could get a dining table down here, Nico mused. Same brown carpet, but no signs of anything to explain the room's purpose. No ceiling bulb or place to attach one. Not even a single electrical outlet. Mm-hmm. And then I go into the didn't know anything about architecture.
Okay.
So you had we had different rooms.
Okay. Nico's voice was hushed in a kind of reverence. Everything down here is off, you know, like... Who was the old lady in California who built that house with all the doors that went nowhere and fake hallways and everything? Sarah Winchester, I told him. Except her house is now an internationally famous tourist attraction, and this place was bigger. Someone should have known about this. Nico was thinking along the same lines. Seriously, though, who the fuck built all this? And why? For what? No clue, but if there's any explanation, it's probably down here somewhere. I even half believed that, which felt nice. I feel weird walking around a crazy person's house. His eyes darted around the empty room. Not that I expected, like, pit traps and rotating blades, but it feels sort of unsafe. He had finished his coffee and was fiddling nervously with the mug, twirling it by the handle back and forth on his fingers. He kept glancing at me like...
Okay, I didn't have that bit.
Okay.
About the coffee cup. I didn't have any of that.
Okay. He kept glancing at me like he wanted me to say something that would make him feel better, to save him, so I tried my best like always. You ever notice old horror movies have lots of really improbable architecture, I babbled? I want to meet some of those architects. Probably all dead by now, but I want to grab them by their ghostly lapels and ask them why the fuck they built all those crawl spaces and secret torture rooms and basements without proper lighting.
Can we not talk about horror movies right now?
You're freaking me out, man. Nico said.
Also Ghost. Maybe just shut up, actually. But he was grinning. Are you still grinning?
He held the light under his face, washing it out in a ghostly tan as his eyes rolled into his head. Freaking me out.
We moved on.
Attractive.
Oh, attractive. And then we moved on?
Nope.
Nope. Let me see.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a we moved on.
Let me see. Oh, man. Oh, I have you freaking me out, man. Here it is.
Okay.
So, yeah, I have more than you here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Can we not talk about horror movies right now? Also Ghost. Maybe just shut up, actually. But he was grinning. We moved on. The next door we tried was another locked one. For some reason, I knocked. Why did you do that? Nico hissed. I shrugged, smiling despite myself. But then a weird sensation came over me, like walking on someone's grave. Because as silly as it was, we both couldn't help waiting for a breath or two. Listening. Isn't that how that expression goes? Walking on someone's grave? Or is it someone walking on yours? No, that wouldn't make sense. Never mind. There was no answer, of course. You're freaking me out, man, Nico said. He held the light under his face, washing it out to a ghostly tan, and his eyes rolled up in his head. Freaking me out. Attractive. You would totally date undead me. Rotting flesh and all. Don't pretend you wouldn't.
You're half skeleton already. There's barely any flesh to rot off you. Come on. He grabbed my shoulder and propelled me down the hall. Let's keep going. The rough of his hand shocked some courage back into me. My shoulder felt cool when he took the hand away. A few more paces down the hallway.
I didn't have any of that.
Okay. A few more paces down the hallway, it opened into a pentagonal room, a closed door in each wall other than the one we'd entered through. We tried a few. Each door opened onto another staircase leading down. But seriously, Nico said, alarmed, this cannot possibly be here. It doesn't make any sense. He looked toward me, desperate. Ryan, help. Okay, I said, grasping at straws. Maybe it's like a whole underground network. All these houses in the neighborhood connecting together. People used to smuggle drugs or something. Underground railroad. Decor's too new, he countered, and we haven't found any other stairs back up.
Bomb shelter. Last owner decided to modernize. Dreamt of turning it into the ultimate student housing complex. Collapsed from construction debt before he could get rich off desperate kids willing to live in windowless, asbestos-lined death traps. He shook his head. Let's go back, man. I don't like this. Something's not right. I peered down one of the dark stairwells, frustrated. It bothered me that we might be so close to figuring this out. The next door might open onto something that explained it all. As an undercurrent of excitement cut through the tinge of fear. This was fun. We were exploring, on a quest together. I didn't want it to end. It can't go on forever, I said. And whatever's deepest down will be the most interesting, right? I talked him into it. After all, there was nothing dangerous down here. It wasn't like exploring an abandoned mine shaft. Everything was in perfect repair, even if no one seemed to have been here for years. Solid enough, Nico said, poking at the wall. Just not a lot of, ambiance. The staircase we picked dropped down a few dozen steps, then turned at a weird angle and dropped some more. It wasn't necessarily smaller, but felt more claustrophobic. Maybe that was my brain reminding me how deep underground we must be getting. At most of the landings, a new hall branched off, each at a different angle. We kept going down.
After 4 or 5 weird angle twists, the stairs ended, opening into another corridor. This one felt different, but I couldn't put my finger on why.
Everything felt exactly the same, despite being stories deeper underground.
The texture of the carpet, maybe, or something changed in the wall paneling, like a new decorator working on the same plans. There were more doors.
It was bland and anonymous as office space in a skyscraper.
Were there more doors?
There were more doors, but before that there wasn't anything about the carpet and stuff.
We shuffled past them, flashlights glinting off doorknobs, and there was a difference. Instead of the wall sconces, fake candelabra now. You know the ones with those awful faux candles that flicker orange and don't fool anyone. They weren't lit now anyway. It's hard to explain the quiet. It felt complete in a way than the absence of sound. Like we were far away from anything that made noise, other than us. I guess we were. We stopped...
I didn't have that paragraph.
We stopped less to try side doors now, eager to get to the end of the hall, or the end of something at least, for some answers. For a long stretch, there were no doors at all, just wood paneling, so that when we did come to another door, it was a relief, like exhaling a long breath.
A held breath.
Oh, it wasn't. I'm sorry, it was a held breath.
Ah!
Like
you can't read it wrong, because then I think it's different.
Nico tried it, and it swung open onto a room like nothing we'd seen so far.
Dun, dun, dun.
It was concrete and tall, with rounded corners at the bottom. The ceiling was higher than the walls, like we were in a pit dug into a bigger room. In the center of the concrete floor was a drain. Nico, intrigued, grabbed the bottom of a short ladder that ended around a shoulder height and pulled himself up to the top of the pit, flashlight swinging wildly. I clung to mine, keeping it steady, like a candle I was afraid would blow out. I felt afraid, without knowing why. He shined his light back down at me. Yep, he said. It's a swimming pool. That made sense by some incredibly loose definition. What's up there? He turned away from the lip, moving out of sight. Patterns of light swam across the ceiling as he swung the flashlight around. Something rattled. Another kitchen. His voice bounced oddly off the rounded concrete. This one's all furnished, though. I was getting more and more unsettled, unaccountably so. Any more doors? The reflections of light moved to and fro like something alive. Nope, no way in or out except through the pool, and there's no place to sit and eat either.
I didn't have that sentence between nope and there's no place to sit and eat. About there not being another way out. I didn't have that sentence.
He paused, more scuffling. Funny, the fridge is locked. Like there's a keyhole on the fridge and you can't open it. Who does that?
That's not good. The door we'd come through, I noticed, was the same as all the others. Cheap particle board, regular brass brass-plated knob, not especially waterproof. I bent down, pushed it shut. Sure enough, there was a gap between it and the top of the carpet, like you'd expect for any regular door, not, you know, at the bottom of a swimming pool. Hey, Nico, I straightened up, keeping my voice steady. Let's go back. I wanted to add, I don't like this, or maybe I want to get the hell out of here right now, but some irrational fear gripped me that if I showed any weakness, he'd be the one who wanted to keep going down, going deeper. Something rattled up there, wood scraping wood. There's silverware in these drawers, he called out, as if he hadn't heard me. Cups in the cabinets, too. Super 70s. Like the cups your grandma probably had, you know? I think Barbarella had these cups. His voice was starting to seem unreal. I felt how tenuous a connection I had to him. A voice, the glints of his flashlight onto the ceiling above the empty pool, echoes and shadows. The distance between us seemed vast and growing vaster, maybe already unbridgeable. I remembered lying in bed as a kid, waiting to be tucked in, and the person I loved most in the world vanishing between one blink and the next. I know you didn't have that.
I did not have that.
Because one of the things we didn't talk about being different is we both had things from when we were kids. You had to think about dreams.
Yes, I had.
And I had a thing about my father disappearing between blinks when he would come in to say goodnight to me. Mm-hmm. So I know you wouldn't have that because that calls back to a thing way previous.
I also didn't have that Barbarella line at the end.
Yeah?
Yeah, I didn't have that line.
Okay. And then maybe I imagined this between the weird echoes of that concrete pool bottom and the nerves I'd worked up. But I thought I heard muffled voices, faint, coming through the wall, coming from the other side of the closed door back out.
No, mine does not specify back out. It just says closed door.
Just the closed door.
Well, because mine doesn't have any other way out.
They
make it explicit that
you made it explicit that was the only door.
So, like, you can see my chapter ends like way up here on page 31, and
way up here.
You had considerably more in this chapter,
and you could probably see us turning pages at different times too.
Yeah. So yeah, I partway through I remembered the dreams. So mine had a thing about dreams in the sand, and there were these pits in the sand that had teeth at the bottom, and you had something completely
and I had a thing about my father disappearing that, like, he convinced himself was his dad came in and he fell asleep and then he'd wake up and his dad wasn't there, but it felt like he had just blinked and his dad was gone.
Yeah. Well, so is there anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Okay.
I think it's fun. I think it's fun reading it with you and finding the little things that are different.
Yeah. Are we going to keep reading it out loud, or do you want to...
I think at some point probably not.
Yeah, we're going to have to... Otherwise, we're not going to get through it at any, like,
yeah, it does take a bit longer to read it that way.
Yeah, but I will be interested to hear, like, we know when the dreams come up, when the drinking happens.
Well, I feel like that's gone now, because, like, we've already had the hangover, and although unless that's a thing for my character.
That might be a thing.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
So... But we have a couple of things, but I don't know if we're going to pick up on these these little sentences.
No, we definitely won't.
Like these little like moments, even that thing about on the rooftop.
Yeah, that felt like, I don't know, that felt significant, and it's something my character has with Nico that yours doesn't.
Yeah, so there's probably going to be moments, because ultimately, like, how many pages is yours? I think you might have this slightly longer one.
Not counting the alternate scene?
Yeah.
Okay, because my alternate scene is from a different rendering of the main text of this version of the book. Mm-hmm. So it's a different rendering.
Yeah, so you can see, like, what it looks like.
So I end on 216.
And I end on 215. So who knows? I'm not sure how different they're going to end up getting.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to, like, check in and compare notes on how things have progressed and if we have weird differences.
Yeah.
I liked that we had some different rooms that we went in, because that feels very on brand for, like, the house that changes. It felt very on brand for us to experience completely different rooms, even if it was a very, like, short bit where nothing really happened in those rooms. We just found them.
Yeah. And that was my assumption, that because we're doing this, like, infinite hallway, infinite room thing, that we could have storylines where they go into different locations, they go into different rooms, or maybe in a different order. And so we'll have to see if it gets any if we spread out further in our differences as the story goes on. But it was fun reading the second chapter with you.
And sometimes even just the little differences I think are interesting, like how your hallway felt smaller and mine felt bigger. Like that just gives you a completely different sense of the space. And it's one word, but it's a very interesting change to be like, oh no, now I feel completely differently about this than you do.
Yeah.
Like one is a lot more claustrophobic and the other's more open. So like even in that one word, it like gives you a different feeling of the hallway.
Yeah. But again, my only concern is if we don't start deviating a little bit more significantly, are we even going to catch the differences? Are we going to catch these deviations?
And I don't know, like how different do you want to make your weird books that are different? Like, do you want to make it to where it's hard to talk about? Or, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Okay.
Could be fun.
It could be fun. All right. I hope you had fun listening to us read Chapter 2 of Subcutanean. As always, please like and subscribe to help us grow this corner of our BookTube community. I hope your reading journey is going well. And until the next one, take care.
Bye.